Hello. This video lecture is the first video lecture we'll be dealing with from the age of exploration to European conquest. We'll be focusing more on the Portuguese and the Spanish. We'll be dealing with their exploits of exploring the Americas, North, South America, and the Caribbean, and European conquest of the indigenous people, the Native Americans. Okay. One of the things that we want to establish is the difference between the definition of discovery and exploration. You cannot say that the Spanish and the Portuguese discover the Americas because the Americas were already there and there were people already living there. The indigenous people, the Tejanos, Native Americans were already living there with their own culture, their own religion. So it's the proper term we have to use is exploration because that's what they're doing. They were exploring the area. One of the things that we're going to get into is what are the reasons why they're exploring the area? What are the reasons for competition among these European nations? What we also will illustrate is that there is these pictures right here, a trade and a clash with non-European nations. And we mean that the Spanish and the Portuguese, of course, there is trading with the indigenous people in the Americas, but there's also a clash of cultures and ideas and religion with the indigenous people, which will lead to conquest. You will also look at the formation of Latin America, which is really the Spanish and the Portuguese, intermixing with Native Americans and African enslaved Africans, which will now create the community we now call Latin America. You will also get into the competition between these empires, the Spanish and the Portuguese empires, and how they will expand. These competitions lead for the British, the French, the Spanish, the Portuguese to engage in battles from the 1500s up to the 1800s, literally over who owns what and where in the Americas and in the Atlantic Ocean as well. So this is what is significant about this lecture. Okay, this is a map of Europe. We're going to be focused on Spain and Portugal, which used to be Al-Andalus. That's what it was called. Understand something that the African Moors and the Arab Muslims gave civilized Romans created education for Al-Andalus, which is now Spain and Portugal. After that, they were kicked out of Spain and Portugal, and they had to now revitalize their population because it was hit hard by the bubonic plague. Okay, now the African Moors and the Arab Muslims are kicked out of southern France, Spain, and Portugal. Now they're going on into empire. And you have to understand what are the reasons for the age of exploration. One, it was national prestige and power. The Spain, Portugal, and later on the British and the French will engage in what is called empire building. Empire is nothing new in world civilization. This time is going across the Atlantic. That's what makes it even more powerful now. So national prestige and power. These nations are competing against each other for prestige and power over who owns what and where in the Atlantic. So they have these done now, and now you begin to have, now they're creating empires. In order to have a major empire, you have to have colonization. And now, who do you colonize? Well, in order to be an empire, you have to have colonies. And the people who will become colonized are those Native Americans in the Americas. So how do you gain control over the Native Americans? Well, you do that through culture and religion. One, you use missionaries to convert them to religion, unforced or forced. And as you control the religion, you control the culture, you control the education. Now you have access to the land because now when you control someone through the Christianity, mostly through Christianity, you now gain a foothold to the land. There's the culture, and then there's this outright violence that you'll use. So this is what they've done. Now that you have a foothold into the land through the control of non-European, through religion and culture, you now have economic exploitation of the American resources, meaning this: what is more valuable in the land? And if the land is fertile, you can grow crops. Well, wow, you can now grow crops. Now you can exploit it. Now you control it. You can subjugate Native America. And now you can make them plant crops, and you can exploit the natural resources for your benefit. So these are the major reasons why they're engaging in major exploration. Okay. These are two very important people. This is Bartholomew Diaz of Spain, and this is him right here. You see right here in the name. And this right here is Prince Henry the Navigator, or Prince Henry of Portugal. You have to understand why this man is very important, because this man finances these events. And Spain and Portugal are now in competition with each other over who can finance the exploration, who can find what, and who can engage in these particular activities that we just talked about in terms of the reasons for exploration. Who can engage in controlling Native Americans? Who can also engage in exploiting the natural resources in the Americas? This is where, now, how do you sail across the Atlantic? Well, it's very important that you use the winds. These wind currents were used specifically to help navigate across the Atlantic, because if you use the wrong winds, you could be blown away here into Africa, into South America. But if you use the winds appropriately, you can use the winds to blow towards the Caribbean, to blow towards South America, blow towards North America, and then when you sail from here, you can use the winds to blow back up here towards Europe. So that's how you go. Now, this man is very important. Now, many of you may know of him right here as Christopher Columbus, but his real name is Cristobal Colon. He is Italian, and he's funded by Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand of Spain. 1492 is major importance. Here's a man who sailed out. He makes at least 3 or 4 expeditions, and it's really from 1492 up to 1503, 1506 that Cristobal Colon explored into what is now known as the Caribbean. As he explored the Caribbean, it is right here where he meets the Tejano natives. And as he looked upon him as the Tejanos, Cristobal Colon, or Christopher Columbus, whatever you want to call him, all right, he said that these men are uncivilized. They're walking around naked. Now, here this man is in the Bahamas. It's over 120 degrees. The Tejanos, you can argue, are dressed more appropriately towards the environment. Well, for him, he's dressed in all of this area right here, where it's polyester and large fabric. In 120 degree weather, he has to be sweating profusely, so he has to be hot. The question is this, that the Europeans have now stated that they are in a position to dictate who is civilized and who is uncivilized. And the question is, how can you bring civilization to people through violence? That's the major question we have to get through here. So this is what these missionaries do. Because they're not Christian, they feel that we have to Christianize and civilize the heathens, which are the Tejano Indians. This is what made Christopher Columbus historically significant and historically important, is that his voyage sets the stage for the Atlantic slave trade of Africans. And it sets the stage for the colonization and the conquest of Native Americans. People such as the Spanish conquistadors, the Italian merchants will all come out. This Portuguese, they're all going to come out, and they will pretty much colonize the Americas. And they will bring over, engage in a more global slave trade of Africans that only Europeans will benefit from. And then they will create plantation societies in the Americas. That is the historical significance of Christopher Columbus, or Christopher Colon, whatever you want to call him. Okay, and this is his European exploration. Of course, this is his voyages right here, 1492, 1502, 1498. You know, and this is the Columbian Exchange. This is very important because when I talk about the old world to the new to the old world, the new world is the Americas. The old world is Europe. From the new world, the Native Americans gave them vegetables, syphilis, spice and tobacco. This helped to revitalize the European populations. Well, for the old world to the new world, yes, you have domesticated animals. You have guns, because they pinned Native Americans against each other with guns. You now have these diseases. You now have typhoid fever, measles, smallpox. I mean, and they're not immune to these diseases. So now you see a depopulation of the indigenous people. And this is a great map that I like to use for this. Actually, this is what they are giving toward them: the peanuts, the potatoes, the tomatoes, the corn, pineapples, cocoa, everything else. And this and that, what they're giving. They're giving domestic animals. They're giving olives, onion, peaches, grains, livestock. But you're also giving smallpox, influenza, typhus, measles. Okay. And of course, this is what a picture looks like of smallpox. These are Native Americans. And of course, they're not immune to this. These are people who die. So this is what leads to major depopulation. Well, this concludes, yes, this concludes this video lecture. Please come again.